Hi, welcome to Mondays with Michelle, a sanctuary where we unite to inspire hope and peace through engaging discussions about mental health, relationships, and parenting. I'm Michelle, your guide through the sanctuary. I'm a mental health therapist with over 14 years of experience, an aspiring author currently navigating the book proposal process, a peacemaker, and an advocate for those without a voice. Today, we will discuss how to use our executive functioning abilities to manifest, including organization and self awareness. So we'll start with our card for today. I grabbed kind of perfect for our theme today, Affirmations for Manifesting Your Heart's Desires by Julie Dane. And the card I pulled for us, there we go. I embrace change as it propels me toward greater experiences. So, change is a natural part of life. We all go through it. There's a saying that the only thing we can expect in this world and count on is change, which tends to be true. Things change, we grow, we learn. We do a lot of different things. So life is constantly changing and we're constantly transforming. So we'll start today by talking about executive functioning. So what executive functioning is it's a set of cognitive processes that come from right here, from what's called our prefrontal cortex. So from this area right behind your forehead. That's the last part of your brain to develop, and it also is really the home to our higher level thinking abilities and capabilities. And those are the processes that can really help us manifest what we want in our life. So, some of those processes are things called volition, planning and decision making, and effective action, doing what works. So, what's volition? That's kind of a big word. It's simply setting an intention or a goal. It's also referred to as your will. So, it's really where you're going to direct your energy, what you are going to focus on. So, our volition, like I said, helps us set that goal, helps us set an intention. So you start thinking, what do I want in my life? What change would I like to make? What would I like to be different in my world? And it could be anything. I mean, there's lots of different goals. Some of the common ones are health and wellness, financial goals. Those are kind of two main ones, but we can definitely have other goals as well. Educational goals are obviously common, especially for young adults, but even later on in adulthood, sometimes people make a choice to go back to school to learn a new skill or grow and expand in their own area or career to be able to do similar but different things. And then the next part of executive functioning is that planning and decision making. So it really helps when we plan. So once we have the goal and we start to plan it, always start with why. I don't think I have Simon Sinek's book sitting next to me, but his work and his podcast are some of my favorites. Honestly, I'm not much of a podcast person, but there are a few that I'll watch or every once in a while, and his is definitely one. He has really good people come on who he interviews, and his concept is really solid. It's simple, but most things in life, most strategies, most mental health sort of strategies, personal development, self-help, they truly are fairly easy. Implementing them is harder than it sounds, but most things aren't hard. they're pretty simple things that we can do every day or every week or every month that really helps us. So, Simon Sinek's work is the concept of starting with why. So, whenever you set a goal, the first step of planning and decision making is to ask yourself, why? Why do you want this? Why do you want to get up and exercise every day? Why do you want to eat different? Why do you want financial stability? Why do you want another college degree? So, like I said, that first question is ask yourself why. And it may be something simple. Maybe you want financial stability to, like if your goal is to get out of debt in order to have financial stability, your why behind that may be because you want financial freedom, you want to be able to save more for retirement so you can stop working at some point in time in your life instead of working, as long as you live. If you want to get healthier, maybe your why is you want to live to see your future grandchildren. You want a higher quality of life so you don't have to worry about having a heart attack or a stroke or other sort of health problems. So you really want to, take care of this vessel that we're in order to do those things. So once you've figured out your why and you've clearly articulated that, then you can move into the other W's and how. So the other W's, who? Who can support you through this goal? Maybe you have a friend who is willing to walk with you every morning. For financial stability, maybe you have a partner in your life who will, kind of help you budget and manage your finances, kind of teach you some of those budgeting skills to help you manage your finances to achieve that goal. And then there's lots of people who can help you along the way. Maybe you're part of, well, obviously you're part of a community because you live somewhere. But other community members, specific community members, maybe you have someone at your bank who can help teach you or help you set up a financial plan or a budget. Yeah, so there's lots of people in our life who can really help support us along the journey. And maybe it's as simple as asking somebody to be your accountability buddy. Just somebody to check in with you to make sure that you did your exercising every day like you wanted to or that you intended to do. So we got through why and who. So then what? What steps do you need to take to accomplish this goal? I've been talking about it a little bit with health and wellness and with, financial stability, those very specific steps. So for a health and wellness goal, you may set up a walking plan and figure out how many steps you're going to walk every day or the distance you're going to walk every day. Or maybe you're going to set up some other sort of exercise plan, maybe with some weightlifting or other cardio sort of activities. And then if our goal is involving finances, one of the first steps we can take is develop a budget. Maybe monitor and see, where is my money going? I also, in my article for the week, if you haven't read it, check that out. I talked about the intention or the goal, just really starting from kind of a random thought and how you can turn that into action. So what I talked about is having the thought, I need a break. And the why is to rest, restore, repair, rejuvenate, all of those kind of RE sort of words. Who can support you? Yourself, maybe a partner, maybe your friend's gonna go with you, the travel companies, the hotel staff. I mean, there's a lot of people who can support you there. And what steps you need to take, those are pretty specific too. You create that plan that you're gonna put in place, because since that's the executive functioning skill we're talking about is planning. So we create that plan, like where do we want to go? So we can, like, with what steps we can take, we can plan out how we're going to get there, what we're going to do. Just kind of really planning out all of the different things involved. Where are we going to stay? There's just so many questions that can answer, and that can be the what. Answer what steps do you need to take. When, give yourself a timeline for when you're going to accomplish the goal. This part's really important. Everybody has great intentions. Everybody wants to get healthy or save money or go on vacation. The amount of people who say that they always talk about going on vacation, but then they never do, kind of amazes me. So right away when you're planning and figuring out your goal, your intention that you want to manifest, answer that one question right away and set yourself a timeline. So maybe we're going to plan a vacation for next spring, or maybe it's going to be sooner. Maybe you're going to, I don't know, plan a long weekend getaway this weekend since it's Labor Day weekend. So maybe you're going to take the 3-day weekend and go somebody nearby to rest and rejuvenate. But figure out the timeline. When are you going to do this? And then where? So that could be things like, specifically, if you're going on vacation, there's definitely a where. Where are we going to go? And if you're not, like, the where can even be online. Like if you have a financial goal, maybe you're going to download some QuickBooks software and incorporate those things, and your budget's going to be developed with the help of that program. And so your where is online. Your where, maybe, if it's exercising, maybe your where is the gym, or maybe you're going to do some home exercising. Maybe it's going to be a local park that you want to go to and walk around, or a trail. So where do you want to do this, or where do you need to do this goal? And then how kind of goes into, like, the how and the what are pretty connected, but the how can be a little bit more too, because it's how you're going to accomplish things. So it's more specific. It's the methods and strategies you're going to utilize. So the how may be broken down into, I'm going to use a certain app to find an affordable hotel or an Airbnb. Maybe it's using a certain app to find a flight, or maybe you're going to use a certain search engine to find an affordable flight. Maybe you're going to drive. Maybe it's coming up with a packing list of items that you want to take with you and you don't want to forget. And maybe it's breaking down that timeline even more of when you're going to accomplish certain things. Maybe a method for going on vacation is figuring out your budget. How much money am I going to need? So, if I am going in the spring, I have some time to plan. What's my budget going to be? How much do I have to save every month to be able to go on that vacation in the spring? All right. So that is the 5 W's and the H, the how. So then the last piece of kind of the main chunks, the main portions of executive functioning, or the main tasks of executive functioning, is taking purposeful and effective action. So not only just writing down those things or thinking about the 5 W's and the H, then you have to take the action to follow through with it. It needs to be purposeful and effective. So we can't just say we want a healthier life. We need to take the action to walk out of our house and go for a walk. Or we need to walk out of our house, get in a car, and drive to the gym. Maybe the effective action for a financial goal is I am going to right now download QuickBooks and get all of that set up so it tracks my spending, my income, all of that stuff for me. And then it can help me develop my budget and know what my budget is. All right, so that takes us through that section. So then we move into organization. Our executive functioning still helps us with our organization. So the first step of getting ourselves organized, I call this part every week, I call it organizing my life. So typically every Sunday, usually, I set some time for myself to organize my life. Sometimes that takes longer than others, depending on how much my life got disorganized that week. But Sundays are my time to organize myself. So what that looks like when you break down how to organize is first develop a system. One of the main things we need to focus on a system for is papers. What are you going to do with all of your paper? Even though we live in an online kind of world, I am still surprised how much paper we collect. At least I do. I have so much paper, from mail to, my business, important paperwork. I just end up with so much paper. So develop a system. I mean, typically that involves things like having a file cabinet, having some like hanging file folders, then some other file folders that just go inside the hanging file folders. It may involve some certain colors. Some file folders are colored, so you can, color code what your system is. But develop some sort of system is your first step. And then have a neat workspace. So don't have papers all over your desk. Don't let your to-do list pile up too high, or, the stack of papers that you need to make it through. Don't let that get too high. Just do a little bit every day. Stay on top of things. Maybe have a container for pens. I have lots of little kind of containers and things to put pens and other office supplies in. I've got one container. I've got some sticky notes and some index cards, and they're definitely within reach. I have some books that I use frequently hanging out next to me, so I can reference those when I need to. So, get organized, have a system where you can maintain a neat workspace. You'll feel a lot better knowing where things are and having the space you need to accomplish things. And after you have a system, really incorporating some time management. You kind of need a separate system for this. So using things either paper or online, there are a lot of different options for time management. I tend to use both. I have planners, I have calendars, I have online calendars like my Google Calendar. I've got technically 2 work calendars now because I can't integrate the 2, which is really frustrating. I really like systems where you can integrate them into your calendar. Unfortunately, one of my new calendars and systems that I can't get rid of, it does not give me that option. Maybe someday. I can only hope. But figure out what will work for you. And I tend to have different calendars for different areas of my life. Um, so, for example, one of my physical calendars hanging on my wall, one of them is my exercise plan. So, what am I going to do each day to take care of my body? So, that's its own specific calendar and it's in my exercise area. So, I can just kind of check things off as I get them done. Then, another calendar I have is kind of like the courses. I do a lot of self-development, and so courses that I participate in, that calendar is on a separate calendar and a space where I can see that, like, oh, when does this next course I'm taking, when does it start, when does it end, what are the different steps, like what's the schedule in the course, so that way I can keep track of that. Then I talked about like my online calendars are more my day to day sort of stuff. Like, who am I meeting with when? When do I have time to record this podcast to talk to all of you? Because you're amazing. So I want to schedule you. And then when you're doing your time management, also like writing out your to-do list. So this is part of Organize My Life every week is, okay, what are the steps? We're going back to kind of that purposeful and effective action. What are the steps I need to take this week to accomplish my goals? And then kind of breaking it down like, okay, when do I have time to do this? When do I have time to do that? And my schedule can get, I don't know, it's kind of easy, but it includes everything. Like, I have my time to exercise on my schedule. I have my lunch break, which is the same time every day, but it's on my schedule. So kind of everything that I need to do is scheduled out throughout my day. And then the last part of organization is flexibility. This one can be hard. Even for me, it can be hard. So, life doesn't go as we have planned, and that can be really frustrating. So, like, meetings get canceled, people cancel plans, like an emergency happens, and then you have to readjust everything. And so we have to be flexible. We have to have that flexibility to just go with the flow. And if something changes, it changes. It's okay. I have kind of a hard time what they call switching sets. Like, if it was in my plan I was going to meet with my client and at this time and then they no-showed, one, I'm kind of hanging out seeing if they show up late, and so I don't necessarily want to get involved doing something. But once I get to the point I realize they're not going to show up late, then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? Even though I have my to-do list, sometimes it's still challenging for me to kind of shift gears to be like, okay, I'm not going to be doing this thing I had expected to do now. So now what am I going to do instead? So that's the organization piece. And then the last part of executive functioning that I talked about this week is self-awareness, because that's a really huge part of manifesting or accomplishing goals, whatever you want to call that. So the first part of being self-aware is self-monitoring. I'm not sure if you guys have one. I have a smartwatch, and those have so much self-monitoring on them. So I can, kind of scroll over. I can see how many steps I've taken, how long I've exercised today, how many calories I've burned during that time. I can see how long I slept last night. I can see when I went to bed and when I got up and how long I was actually asleep. I can see my sleep score. I can see the different stages of my sleep, how much I moved during sleep or how much I was awake, how long I stayed in REM sleep, light sleep, deep sleep. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, there's so much self monitoring going on, and you don't even need to do anything. Like, it just records. And then at the end of the week, it tells me, hey, you got this much more exercise time in. Yay, great job. Or, oh, you didn't get as much exercise time in this week as you did last week. So you can really monitor your progress, and then you can adjust and adapt. So I don't know, maybe I got in less active time last week. So then I can reflect on that and make decisions of, okay, what interfered with that? What can I problem solve or figure out? To really make sure I'm getting that time in, because that's one of my priorities. And then our judgment helps us to be self aware and help us make choices and decisions. So we use our judgment all throughout the day, every day. And we do have to make some judgment calls, kind of going back to the flexibility piece. Maybe I'm not going to exercise this morning and I'm going to use that time instead to do some paperwork that's at its deadline. So I'm spending my time on a goal of doing some paperwork and getting done what I need to get done by the deadline. And then I'll get back to exercising tomorrow. So we need to exercise that judgment and make choices and decisions that are best for us in the moment. And then lastly, we have impulse control. That's part of this prefrontal cortex as well, is controlling our impulses. The bright and shiny things that catch our attention, and we want all the bright shiny things. But if we're using impulse control, we may have the urge, like let's say you have a health and fitness goal. You're at the grocery store and you see a candy bar. It looks really good. You haven't had a candy bar for a while and you really want a candy bar. But impulse control helps you recognize, like it helps you stop and think for a little bit, like, would that candy bar help me achieve my goal for health and fitness and following my nutrition plan? You can decide that from you. You know, some people, it's definitely okay to have a treat every now and then. So you can make that choice and decision, but impulse control helps us stop and think to make a choice that's really aligned with our goal, which may be, nope, I'm not going to grab a candy bar, but I am going to go grab a bag of carrot sticks and snack on those during the day when I'm hungry and want a snack. It might be something kind of looking bigger. If you have a goal to go on a vacation next spring and you're setting aside a certain amount of money, then your impulse control may help you, like, no, I'm not going to buy a candy bar because I can put that money into savings. Or, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to buy that. You know, we're just bombarded with ads. So you see the ads on your social media, instead of, again, looking at the ad and going, ooh, look at this shiny thing. I need that. To really stop and think about your goals, you know, like, no, you know, it'd be great to have this bright, shiny thing, but I'd rather go to Florida or Maine, wherever you're going to go next year in the spring. Hawaii. It's my favorite place to go. I've only been there once. It was my favorite. So that's it for using our executive functioning to be able to manifest what we want or what we desire. So now it's your turn to use these skills and start implementing them into your daily life. using our brain's capacity. Really, I mean, we were given this brain power. We're a very special species. So, really using these gifts that we were given to our fullest. So, I want you kind of all the things, the activity, the intention, and our weekly reflection are all pretty aligned with pretty much the same thing this week. So, the first step that we talked about is identify your goal or your intention. So, I mean, I've given lots of examples already. It could be something like, I want to go on a vacation. I need a break. I need time off work to get out of my routine. I need financial stability. I need to pay off my debt. I need to live a healthy lifestyle. Whatever your goal or intention is, write it down. That's a pretty key part. Like, you have to write it down. And then, as I said, start with why. Why do you want to accomplish that goal? Why is it important to you? We can have any goal we want. Why this one? Why do we want to spend this money to go on vacation? Why do I want to save my money for retirement instead of spending it now? Then, once you figure out your why, who can support you? What steps do you need to take? When are you going to do it by? What's your timeline? Where do you need to do things, or where are you going to go? And how? What are the methods and strategies that you're going to implement to be able to achieve your goal? So write those things down. So then, if we have a goal, it might be a short term, it might be a long term goal. The intention for this week, which is how like the intention and our weekly reflection is slightly different. So for the intention, I want you to create a very short-term goal for the week, something that you can accomplish this week. Maybe you want to accomplish not drinking soda for 1 week. Maybe it's you're going to go for a walk 3 days a week. Maybe you're going to save $10 this week. Whatever it is, just set that intention, and it's something that you're going to achieve by this time next week. So by September 1st, you're going to accomplish it. And then our reflection is something you're going to accomplish this next month, within the next 30 days. Roughly 30 days from now would be September 30th. Or sorry, my apologies, September 24th. Today is August 25th. There's 31 days in the month. So roughly by Wednesday, September 24th, you're going to accomplish that goal. So maybe within the next month, you are going to save $100 to go on vacation in the spring. Or maybe you're going to invest $50 into your 401k, your retirement account. Maybe you're going to stop drinking pop completely within the next 30 days. So again, reflect on why achieving that kind of, not a long-term goal, but it's a little bit longer of a short-term goal, a monthly goal. Why is achieving that goal important to you? Perhaps it brings personal fulfillment, growth, or change to your life. Develop that plan that outlines the essential components necessary to achieve the goal. Who can support you? What specific steps do you need to take? When will each step be completed? Where will the action take place? And outline the methods and strategies that you will utilize to reach the goal. So stay organized and set aside time each week to track your progress. So maybe it's on Monday, maybe it's going to be like on Sundays, like me, where I have my organize your lifetime for myself. Um, but whatever time it is for you, set that aside every week to check in with yourself, look at your progress, how far have you come, reflect on your achievements, and also identify any barriers, what came up, what got in your way, and then you can make any adjustments that you need to make to be able to stay on course, to be able to achieve that goal. And then after the 30 days, absolutely celebrate the progress that you've made. All right. Well, that's it for today. I do have exciting stuff coming.